So thank you very much for having me today. I agree 100% with what Helen was saying, that your principal requirement when thinking about marketing is organising and understanding your target audience and then working out what they either need or what the offer is going to be. The copy can either enhance that and make it easier, or it can make it a jolly dance like harder. And in fact, I've broadened this very slightly to cover the fact that not all copy is written in a sense, that it can be pictures as well. So we want our copy to deliver results. And I think the very most important thing that you need to be aware of when writing your copy is that all purchasing decisions, every single one, is made with the heart first, and then it's post-rationalised with the brain afterwards. And it doesn't matter what decision it is, it doesn't matter how bright people are, it doesn't make any difference what their demographics are. That is the way the mind works. And so you need to have that at the front of your head when you start. It means that when you're writing, you need to appeal to the heart first, but then you need to give up the evidence, because these people, once they've made up their mind, are going to look around to see what the evidence is to justify what they've already decided. So you're starting with a blank piece of paper, and what are you going to write down? Well, I always think the best place to start is with a plan and an image in your mind. And the first thing Helen has already touched on, who are you talking to? Have a vision of that person. Sometimes I actually write for one individual I know when I'm doing this, who fits my target audience, and then generalize it. So it helps me make sure I'm using the right language and the right information when I'm writing. What do they want? And that might be different from what do you want to sell them? It might be different from what do they need? It's what does their heart tell them that they want? Once you've thought about that, how can you do this for them? How are you going to do that specifically? Keep that in mind. Next question. So what's special about you? Because once they know what they want, they were going to have to make a decision. Is it you or is it somebody else? And you want them to choose you. So you need to understand what makes you different from all of the other suppliers out there. And then finally, once you've got all of those bits of pieces down on a piece of paper somewhere, or in a mind map, or however you like to work, you now need to demonstrate your competence to be able to deliver this. And it doesn't matter whether it's a consumer product or it's a business to business situation, the same rules are going to apply on every occasion. Now, the great thing about writing copy is that fundamentally, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Number one is to create empathy and create desire. That's the first and most important hurdle. The next thing, having done that, you need to make sure that whatever you've written can easily be read, can easily be absorbed, and can be easily remembered. And then finally, that post-rationalisation, you need to provide them with the justification for the decision that they've already made to use you or your products or your services. Let's imagine that we're not writing right now. Let's imagine that we're in a face-to-face environment. How do you create, when you meet somebody, empathy, specifically empathy? Well, typically, and it's the first thing that everybody did today when they arrived at the Zoom meeting, even though we're not really completely face-to-face, is we smiled. So I'm going to smile at you guys. And what everybody has just done, which is wonderful, thank you very much, I can really see Helen's smile from ear to ear, is that she smiled back. And do you know, smiling makes you feel good. It produces endorphins in the body, makes you feel good. So that's an association now that Helen thinks of me and thinks of smiling, which is just what I want, is creating empathy here. We all use positive body language. So we go to a networking meeting, my hands are out, you can only just about see them, but your hands are out, you've got open shoulders, you're engaging, you want to engage. You mirror their behaviour. We've all been on a date where we've done this and the other person's done that too. You look for similarities so that you can share. So Stephanie and I did this earlier by sharing the fact that we both got children and then had a quick chat about it. That makes us feel warm. Not only that, but we both are marketeers, so we shared that as well. So that creates an immediate warmth and understanding. The next thing when we're at a networking meeting, or if we're trying to sell something to a person that's walked in off the street in a shop, it might be that we understand what their problems are, what their wants are, what their desires are. And wherever possible, we do this. We're nodding. We're going, yeah, you're right. I completely agree. Because that makes them feel good. And be positive. Nobody wants to be with a moaner. Nobody wants to hear about problems. They don't want to know about their own problems, and they certainly don't want to know about yours. They want something really positive, and you want to encourage them. Now, interestingly, copywriting works exactly the same way. And I think that's really important to be aware of that. So when you're doing your copy, we need to produce all of those responses, but from a piece of paper or from a photo or from a diagram instead. So the very first thing you need to do is to make them the star of the show. Fundamental to all copywriting is it's about them, not about you. And get that through your head to start with. It's not I, it's not we, it's them. It's always about them. As I said, be positive. So don't start saying things like, you don't want this to happen, you don't want this to happen, or you've got this problem, or this is an issue for you and I'm going to solve it. What they want to hear is the positives. Yes, you can do it. Yes, you're going to be happy. Yes, you're going to have a fantastic holiday. They want to know the outcome, and that needs to be positive. So home in on that. Next, mirror their language. If I start going off in highfalutin language when I'm speaking to somebody whose language is not, their first language is not English, or they're very time poor, and we're starting to use 4 or 5 syllable words, we've lost them. What we need to make sure is we're using straightforward, simple language, and it mirrors them. So use the language that they would use on a day-to-day basis wherever possible. Avoid your own industry jargon. Show you understand their needs and desires and reflect those back to them. Demonstrate skills, expertise and quality. It's really important. That's all about the positive. It's credibility. It's giving them the ammunition to justify that decision to use you. Use direct, active, short words. Direct and active makes all your sentences shorter. So I could say something, you could do this if you wanted to, or I can say, you do this. And you can see instantly it's much more action orientated, and it will encourage them to be more action orientated as well. Use positive pictures, especially of people. Now, what's interesting, when I smile at you, you smile back. We do the same thing internally with photos of smiling people. So use smiling people whenever you can get the opportunity. Don't show them a picture of the car you're trying to sell. Show them a picture of a car with a lovely person smiling at you next to that car. It will reinforce a very positive message. Finally, make it easy to read. Don't make it difficult to find the information. Don't make it difficult to absorb the information. Don't make it hidden somewhere. And I'm going to go on a little bit more about how to make it easy to read later on. So let's look at an example. I always think examples are really useful ways of actually understanding what a situation is. So this is a real life example of somebody's LinkedIn profile, and it's their About section. Okay, so currently a director of a particular accountancy practice based in Hertfordshire. I started my career after gaining my degree at a university, and I've worked at the firm ever since. Does anybody care about this information? Is anybody in the remotest bit interested? Is it all about them? I'm bored stiff already, and I can't see what this person is going to do for me. Because we're all self-centered really at the end of the day, what we want to know is, what can you do for me? And it's really important to answer that question. It's also a little bit too posh in the style of writing. So let's have a look at a way of doing it without having that being so dull and switching people off. Are you looking for an accountant who specialises in family-run, owner-managed businesses, who understands that your business and personal finances and goals are closely linked? Now that first sentence is creating empathy. It's aimed at people who run family businesses, and by the time you've got to the end of the second question, you've already thought that they're probably a specialist. I specialise in local family run businesses. So now the credibility is coming along, which I think is really important. Then we go on a bit further and we're back into you copy. I will help you answer all of those thorny financial questions such as pay, what's better for me, dividends or salary. So all the way through this list are the questions which most business people ask. It's not saying I can do your bookkeeping, I'll do your audited accounts. That's not what they're interested in when hiring an accountant. And what's more, this allows her to, this particular accountant, to charge more for the services because people are willing to pay for this. And that's a point of differentiation. So moving on, we've talked a little bit about words. Let's talk a little bit about pictures. So a picture paints 1,000 words. So when you're thinking about content, make sure you use some lovely pictures. Now, let's go back to that accountant. Typical accountants will use a picture like this on their website to demonstrate what they do. Now, interestingly enough, that doesn't engender any kind of empathy. It's not making me feel warm and cuddly. In fact, I don't like numbers very much, and a calculator and a whole pile of forms is scary. I don't want that from my accountant. What I want from my accountant is a friendly person helping me. And that image immediately gives that. So if I associate some descriptive words with the first one, scary, faceless, clinical, impersonal, all the things you don't want to do with your marketing. The second picture is reassuring, understanding, approachable. Point of difference, worth paying for. And a little note here, because this demonstrates it very nicely, adding captions can be very helpful and will add emphasis to your messaging. So if I'd just done those pictures without the captions underneath, it might be lost when I sent out my presentation to you. Now you will remember it. So I just wish to prove a point about photography of people. My recommendation is on your website, on your LinkedIn, wherever you get an opportunity, definitely use a photo of yourself. Now you can have a photo where you're just smiling a bit, or you can have a photo of you smiling a lot. The more you smile, the more you show your teeth, the more it reaches your eyes, and the more believable it is. And do you know, people then naturally respond to that. So here is a very happy chap. He's really as friendly as he looks, and so am I, honestly. So including portraits of happy staff positively supports your story, and you can take that all the way through. And I think that's really worth knowing. So go and have a look at your websites. If you've just got a website full of product or full of Shutterstock images or of things, get rid of them. Start bringing in some lovely photographs of people enjoying the outcome of having to deal with you. So let's have a few carry out key tips here, which just to take away. Point number one, which I cannot stress enough. Talk about you and your. Everything should be from the client's point of view. A tip from me would be go through a piece of copy, highlight all the you, yours in one colour, and the I, we and the company name in another colour. You need a lot of the first and not too much of the other, and it will be visually obvious. And additionally, it should be weighted so there's more you at the top and more I at the bottom. So it should change colour as it vignettes down the page. Lead with your customers' needs and desires. Always start there. That will really create some empathy. And make sure you focus on the benefits of using you, your services or products. It's not what the capacity of your computer is that anybody's interested in. I go into a shop and I want to buy a computer. I know what I want to use it for. Maybe I want to game on it. So I want to know that that computer is going to be able to do it. I'm not going to go in with a list of I need this much, these many megabytes of stuff. What I want is a salesman or a saleswoman to come over and say, this is great for gaming. At that point, they've caught my attention. So focus on the benefits, and those benefits should correlate beautifully with the desires of your customer. As we've discussed before, simple English. Think Daily Mail, not the Times. Even if you're talking to people who've got oodles of degrees and PhDs, they're still very time poor. They'll prefer the Daily Mail style. And always be in the positive. Go through your text, underline every don't, every problem, every challenge, every issue, and get rid of them and turn the sentences around to be nice and positive. And we talk about yes, solving, easy, quick, win, free. Lots of wonderfully, lovely words which will create all of that key empathy that we're looking for. Okay, so that's empathy, done and dusted, and meeting our clients' desires. So let's move on to making it easy to get those messages across. So, number one, pictures are better than words, but if you add words to the pictures, they're even better. Video also works brilliantly. Short bullet points. If a bullet point is on 3 lines of text and goes from one side of the paper to the other, it is no longer a bullet point. Bullet points are ideally 5 words or less. It's really important because the eye is scanning down the text and they're pulling out the information very quickly. So if you have to read a sentence rather than a bullet point, it's not doing its job as a bullet point. And also, when you're doing this digitally, bullet points are treated differently by Google and every search engine, so it gives greater emphasis. So in the bullet points, you put your key and most important pieces of information, and ideally keywords, and even better if you can do it, a list of benefits. Don't be tempted to put in your features there, put in your benefits and make sure that you start with them. Next, use headings and captions. I've already used the captions as an example, but headings, again, Google will use those to help make sense of what you've written. But additionally, that's the way people read. Typically, you will read the headline first, then you will read the bullet points and the captions. If it's interesting, you'll read the first paragraph, then you read the last paragraph, and if it's still interesting, you might be bothered to read the rest of the text. That's how people read. So exploit the information that you've got, that's how people read. That's well researched, and you'll be able to find that information on the web. Make it interesting to look at, and don't have huge, long sentences and huge, long paragraphs. Keep it pithy, keep it broken up, because that makes it easier to read. And it also is kinder on the eye. Having space around your paragraphs is really good. Any sentence which has got more than 20 words in it, see if you can cut it down, because it would be better as 2, almost certainly. As we've discussed, use direct active verbs and avoid the passive tense wherever you possibly can. Highlighting text using bold really does work. But capital letters, underlining and italics are much more difficult to read. So if you want to bring emphasis, make it bold, make it bigger. Do avoid capital letters for 2 reasons. One, it's shouting. Nobody likes somebody who shouts at them. And secondly, it is proven that capital letters take longer to read. And we're in an age where everyone's short a time. So if we're short a time, we won't bother. And my evidence for that, just to back it up, is that's why road signs are all in upper and lower case, because we can read them quickly whilst we're driving and it makes it safer. Allow space around your text, a little bit more white space. So don't keep your what's called leading, which is the gap between the lines, as single. Give it a little bit more space. It'll give the text you're writing room to breathe. And don't go all the way from one side to the other. It's very fashionable at the moment. You find this with websites where the text is the full width of the page. As soon as you have to turn your head from one side to the other, it's hard work and you're making it difficult for somebody, particularly if they're dyslexic, to read it. Make it big enough as well. So say the world is 100% of your target audience, and then you exclude everyone who's dyslexic who can't read what you've written. you've got now 90% of your target audience able to engage with you. If we now remove a further 50% because they have reading glasses and they can't read what you've written, we're now down below 50% of your target audience, and you've alienated people completely by accident. This is a situation where being inclusive regarding diversity, and in this case I mean site diversity, is really beneficial to you. If you also make it easy to read, you're not alienating people with literacy issues. So make your text scannable. All of those things together will help make your text scannable quickly. Now, you may be skeptical about what I've just said, so I'm going to prove to you that there's some things that can be done. So let's have a look at some options about how you might write your text on a website or in a brochure. Very, very trendy is whiteout text on a dark background. This is dazzling, really difficult to read, and I don't recommend it. Red writing. Now, red writing for dyslexics is a real problem because, interestingly, it frequently moves around for them. So trying to now read is hard for a dyslexic, but now you're giving them a moving target that you're not going to be popular, they've lost them. Combining the two is obviously a no-no. Colourblind people won't be able to read this at all. Most people don't like this. So you can see by just the way you present the same words, these are all the same size, by the way, so we are doing a compare and contrast, which is real and fair. This has been proven to be the easiest type of text to read for just about everybody. A pale background with dark text, and interesting, generally speaking, for most people, a cream background and a dark blue is probably the ideal. So let's have a quick check of the other things that I claimed. Let's see whether you still agree with me. I'm hoping you are agreeing with you so far. Hard to read, you're shouting. Definitely not a good idea. Italics is also difficult. Underlining is not going to help you. Combining some of this stuff just makes it horrendous. So what's the correct way of doing it? Use bold and larger text when you need emphasis, and avoid red for the word free, for example. Okay, so let me give you a lovely example of where somebody has done something which has made it as difficult as possible for somebody to understand what they're doing. Okay, so this is for visa applicants who are coming into the US Embassy. Now, if you are applying for a visa, English is likely not to be your first language. Let's have a look at what they had actually up. They sent this out as a piece of information. As you can see, it's a block of text. It's full of lots and lots of complicated words and sentences. In order to ensure everyone's safety and to ensure that the security screening does not delay entrance into the consulate and planned interviews, no electronic devices, including all cell phone, telephones, may be brought into the embassy or consulate. Large backpacks, suitcases and glass containers are also not permitted. So as you can see, there's a lot of information here. They've made it difficult to read in a number of ways. If we rewrite that and we replace all of the complex wording with simpler wording, change the background, use bullet points, it becomes a great deal easier to understand what is being asked of you. To ensure security and to avoid delays in accessing the consulate and interviewing you, the following items cannot be brought in. You can read that in a fraction of the time. What's also very important is you'll remember it, whereas you won't remember the other stuff because you will have forgotten what was at the beginning by the time you've got to the bottom of the page. So this is not selling something, it's just a set of instructions, and even instructions and internal communications should be written using these guidelines. Right, so that was point 2. My third point is the justification element. You need to give the post rationalised information. Here's some really useful words which you can use in your text every time to provide your benefit statement. Benefit statement is not features, so therefore it's got to be doing something good. And doing words is what we're going to concentrate on. Old-fashioned, positive doing words. So increasing, you must be increasing, doing something good. Improving, reducing, saving, demonstrating some kind of gain, and meeting the needs. So those are the key things that you need to think about. So, I said at the beginning, you need to plan, write those down, and write next to them the things that you can deliver, starting each sentence with one of those words. It will be really, really helpful. So having got that justification down on paper, let's think about why choose you. So you need to think about how your products or you can really make a difference to your clients. You can offer better quality than your competitors. You can provide a more timely or prompt service. You can give a better solution. You can be much more cost effective. Now notice I've said cost effective, not cheap, because actually it is not a race to the bottom on pricing. What you want is to be able to justify charging more. You can deliver in a more wide or a more convenient way. And you're more personable, so that's the friendly element, and that's particularly important for people in professional services or coaching. And you can be more reliable. So you can make all those claims, but people are going to be looking for some evidence. So make sure you provide that evidence. Evidence can be testimonials or reviews. Nothing like a happy client to be able to say for you. If a client is saying it, not yourself, it's much more credible. Use client stories. Use a third-party customer service. Now, a survey. Now, when I'm talking about third-party customer services, I mean actually going to a third party where people are speaking to a third party. So it's not coming from you. It's not your survey. It's somebody else's survey. So it's justifiable. Use some independently proven metrics. Measurable is really important. You don't want to be just saying, my clients are happy. What you want to say is, I've increased their bottom line by this percentage. And I think that's really important. Show off your awards and get in the press. So I've got a few top tips just at the very end of this, which I hope is going to be useful for you. Number 1, make it sexy. Headlines grab your attention. It's really interesting, but certain words always attract the attention. So let's have a think about what those key words would be. I've already used one, obviously. Sexy is something which everybody always looks at. But actually in copywriting, there's 4 principal words, which if you exploit them, will help you every time and are proven time and time again to increase your response rate. These are you, new, free, and now. Can't emphasize enough that if you put those in, they will help you. So after you've finished your copywriting, go through and make sure you've used them, because the more you use, the more effective it will be. And finally, tap into your reader's imagination. You want them to imagine themselves having enjoyed your product or alternatively received your service and are in such a better place. Okay. Next, copywriters, secret weapons. Don't tell anybody about this. I'm giving away my trade secrets here. Questions are very easy ways of opening up the dialogue. It's so hard when you've got that blank piece of paper and you don't know what to write. So write down the question which you know is in your client's mind. And that way you can also put the you in ever so easily. Stories paint pictures. And they're really memorable. So the thing that people will remember when they leave a networking event is not somebody's really bland elevator pitch, but a story that they've been told. It creates a picture in their head and they carry the picture, and the picture is so much easier to remember than words. State the bleeding obvious. The number of people who think that their clients know what they do when they absolutely don't is huge. So if you think it's obvious to you, it may not be obvious to your client. And also, don't make the assumption that your client has any idea or your prospect knows what you're doing. I have a client who's based over in Watford who is an accounting practice, quite a large one. They go to all the networking meetings, and I was working on their branding, and they wanted to remove the words chartered accountants from their branding because they made the assumption that everybody, because they're seen so much, knows that they are accountants. And I said, you stop a few people and say the words Myers Clark and ask them whether they know what you do. And what we got back was some accountants, solicitors, surveyors, other practitioners, because actually people don't remember. They remember the man in a suit, which is completely different. Repetition works. Or in other words, I'll say that again, repetition works. So don't worry about saying things more than once. And really important, it's amazing how many websites and social media posts miss this bit out. Remember the call to action. You want to tell them what to do. It's a bit like Simon Says. If I say Simon Says, put your hands on your head, there's a number of people in the audience looking at me today who will be starting to put their hands towards their head because I've told you to do it. And that is a really interesting, natural human response. It's almost like a reflex. So let's look at a couple of proofs of the pudding for you. Elevator pitch. I'm a marketer, you all know that. So I could stand up at a networking meeting and I could say something like, my name is Nicola Ryall and I have a marketing agency. I've been in business since 1990. We provide all the usual marketing services you would expect, things like strategy, websites, social media, brochures, branding and copywriting. I have a lovely team of extremely good people. If you want some marketing help, please come and talk to me. Right, that is one way of doing an elevator pitch. The other way is to tell a little story and to bring in the audience into your dialogue. Do you have case studies which you know have closed a sale? No, I think a lot of people may be in your situation. Let me tell you a story about a company called GCL. They install structured cabling, really tedious, but they do it in really big banking headquarters in the City of London. They were tendering for a really big contract. All the tender documents look the same. So we added a case study which showed what they had done, not what they could do. And we included in that case study a glowing testimonial from a happy client. This company, GCL, spent £285 on having that case study properly copywritten. And do you know they won a £50,000 tender on the back of it? That was the thing which made the difference. So I give you a well-written client story will always win through. If you're interested in having a case study written, come and talk to me. I'm a marketing expert. Now, you will probably remember that. You probably won't remember the first thing that I said to you. So let's put it all together. Here's a website before it was copywritten and the pictures were improved. This chap provides wedding cars. He made the car the star. The car is not the star. They're not one who's buying the service. There is very little text and it's all about the detail. We turned it on its head and we made the bride the star. Car's still there, obviously. And we've given a call to action. And we've put in the benefits of using the service. Arrive in style for your special day. So we've got the "your" in as well. This chap who came to me with this particular problem that his website was producing no leads. It wasn't a question of not producing many, it was producing no leads. He went on to be the premier supplier of wedding cars in the whole of, I think, East Sussex as a result, and has sold his business on the back of it. So thank you very much for listening, and I will hand you back to Helen, who I'm sure may have the odd question. I'm very happy to answer.